Hey there, this is James Carberry, founder of Sweetfish Media, and one of the co-hosts of this show. For the last year and a half, I've been working on my very first book. In the book, I share the three-part framework we've used as the foundation for our growth here at Sweetfish. Now, there are lots of companies that have raised a bunch of money and have grown insanely fast, and we've featured a lot of them here on the show. We've decided to bootstrap our business, which usually equates to pretty slow growth. But using the strategy outlined in the book, we're on pace to be one of Inc.'s fastest growing companies in 2020. The book is called Content-Based Networking: How to Instantly Connect with Anyone You Want to Know. If you're a fan of audiobooks like me, you can find the book on Audible, or if you like physical books, you can also find it on Amazon. Just search Content-Based Networking or James Carberry, Carbary, in Audible or Amazon, and it should pop right up. All right, let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. Today is another episode in our Behind the Curtain series. As always in this series, I am joined by my good buddy, founder and CEO, and now author of Content-Based Networking, James Carberry. What's up, man?
Hello, man. That still feels weird to hear and say I'm signing books this morning. That feels even more weird to think that people actually think my signature is worth anything. So, man, I'm pumped to be talking about what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So we are fresh off of spending some time in person together from our leadership team retreat last week. We were, it was kind of fun being in the same place the week that your book launched. So that was fun, a little chaotic, as you talked about. But one of the big things that week was focusing on and putting language to what we call our why and our mountaintop. Now, a lot of people call these their mission statement and their vision statement. And I think maybe to set the stage a little bit there, let's talk a little bit about why we chose to give different language to them. And then we'll talk about, the process of landing on what we landed on.
Yeah. So mission and vision was really what I was going into this thing thinking we were going to call it. I've been I'm a leadership junkie and have been listening to a lot of folks talk about mission, vision, values. And last year, we spent a good part of last year not just establishing our values, we did that at the beginning of the year, but then really baking those values into the fiber of our culture. And so we instituted things like doing a monthly values champion that the entire team votes on every month, and we celebrate those on Slack. And so we're talking about why people exuded, one of our three core values. It's probably the best email of the month that we all get, just seeing how everybody on the team is acting in our values. I close all of my leadership team videos with our values. We talk about our values all the time on Slack when we see people operating out of them. So really baking the values in was huge for us. And I knew that coming into our leadership retreat this year, I wanted to get clear on mission and vision. And as I was talking about it with Ryan from our team, he's our director of people ops and culture, he was really confused by the language. Now, Ryan doesn't necessarily come in with, a whole lot of business background. He's one of our first employees here at Sweetfish. So he's been with us for close to half a decade now. So all of his experience is really Sweetfish experience. And when he hears the term mission and vision, he's like, man, James, it sounds kind of confusing. Like, I don't know how to delineate between the two. And the more I tried explaining to him why kind of it needed to be mission and vision, the more I convinced myself that it really is confusing language. Like you're on a mission and this is the vision. And I can very much see how that's confusing. And so we were at the retreat, we were talking through some ideas, and he came outside and he was like, I got it. It's not mission and vision. It's our why and our mountaintop. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like as soon as he said it, we all thought, that's it. That's what we're going to call what most people call their mission and vision is our why. Why are we in existence? Obviously, Simon Sinek, kind of made that verbiage a lot more popular the last several years because of his TED Talk and his book. But our why is really why we exist. And then our mountaintop is where we're going. And that doesn't mean that once we get to that mountaintop, we're not going to keep climbing and set a new mountaintop. But it does mean that that's where we're heading right now. And I just thought that was really cool language to wrap around the work that we were embarking on at the time over the leadership retreat.
Yeah, I love it, man. I mean, I saw this debate going back and forth on Twitter a little while back. I think Dave Gearhart, Andy Raskin, I think maybe Gaetano was in on that. I can't remember who else, but this mission and vision really feels like splitting hairs, kind of like what you were saying there and trying to explain it and talk about it between you and Ryan. A couple of things I like is you get away from that. Oh, the words just sound this similar, so
Yeah.
there's that issue. And your why and your mountaintop, we talked a lot about in coming up with our language for these and in coming up with our values last year, what sort of visual metaphors do we want to have. And I just love that mountaintop, it's very clear. Okay, why, all right, that's very self-explanatory. And mountaintop, that's where we're trying to go, and that
Yeah.
gives us a goal. And we spent a good bit of time on it. And you said something as we were chatting this morning about the importance of this, that we have been very growth focused. We've had some exponential growth in the last 3 years, and this language is going to be important as it informs how we approach growth. Can you speak to that and kind of the importance and where you feel that plays a role for maybe other leaders and other teams, man?
Yeah. So establishing your why really gives you much more purposeful meaning for pursuing growth. I think for a long time, I mean, I'm guilty of this. It was really pursuing growth for growth's sake. I mean, if we're honest, growth is exciting. Growth is new. Growth is it's I think as human beings, we are wired to desire growth. But when you layer in understanding the why and really being thoughtful about what's a deeper, more purposeful meaning behind what you're doing, it just gives you more fuel to want to grow, because now you're not just growing for growth's sake, but you're growing because there's something meaningful that's going to make the world a little bit better. And I want to be real careful about every SaaS company mission statement is something about how our data analytics platform is going to change the world, and that and I think you'll see, I think listeners will hear as we talk through what our why and what our mountaintop is. We went away from that direction. We didn't do this super ethereal anything you do can change the world, even though I do believe that. I think how we live in our day-to-day lives has an impact on the world. It may not be at the scale that statement makes you think it is, but it does have an impact. But I still wanted to stay away from that language because it didn't feel like us, and it felt too much like what everybody else is saying. And so all that to say, I do think that nailing this stuff down, whether you decide for your organization that having that lofty, we want to change the world language is you and is something that works for your organization and will empower and motivate them toward pursuing the goals that you want to pursue. We even though we didn't do that, I'm not saying that that's wrong and that you shouldn't, but I'm saying that having your why defined, whether you call it a mission or a vision or a why or whatever you want to call it, man, it just gives so much more purpose to pursuing growth when you have that as your North Star.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So with that, do you want to share both of them today, and then speak a little bit to how we're planning to kind of bake those into our regular rhythm as a team throughout the year?
Yeah, so this was a fun process. I came into this for probably the last 6 months. I have been thinking about, mission vision, and I knew that in 2020, the same thing that we've been able to pull off with our values, really getting everyone on the team on board with our values, knowing what they are, using them in everyday language. I wanted that to be the case with mission and vision. What obviously turned out to be why and mountaintop. But the reason for that is because I really do think that you can go further faster when everybody's on the same page and everybody's aligned around where the organization is going and why they're going there. So I'd been crafting some messaging for on and off for about 6 months leading up to this retreat. Maybe not quite
Yeah,
6 months,
yeah.
maybe like four or 5 months. Regardless, I had some kind of pre-baked notions of what it would be. And I remember we were sitting at a pizza place around the table, and I threw out like, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking," and it basically got shot out of the sky,
It really
with a
did.
cannon. I mean, I threw it out, and it was just like I could just tell everybody was like, "Ugh," which nobody wants to be told that their baby's ugly. I've been working on this for 4, 5, 6 months. Like that kind of sucks to hear that everybody's reaction is just kind of like, oh, like that's not, that's not super motivating. And I think the one thing that I was really excited about is, as much as kind of in that moment, I had hurt feelings and, my baby just called ugly. What ended up happening is we together as a team kind of took what I said as a base and kind of reshaped and reformed. And over the course of the next, 24 hours, we didn't land on anything that night, but a couple of people had some really good ideas. Ryan in particular had kind of a fundamentally different way of us thinking about it. And that took us into the next day, where we ended up landing on what those two statements were going to be for us. But we ended up getting to the better result because we collaborated together to get there. So for the CEOs listening to this, I would say, man, be open to allowing your leadership team to have input. If it works out the way that it did for us, the end product of what those statements are going to be so much more rich and so much more fulfilling if you have other people in your organization speaking to them, because they're really going to be the flag bearers for this. As much as it's going to come from the top and the CEO's got to preach it, your leadership team has to be preaching it as well. And something that Ryan said to me when I first, kind of told him what our why, or what I wanted our mission and vision to be, he said, James, if I've got to be a flag bearer for this, I've got to really believe in it, and I've got to really be passionate about it. And what we have right here, I don't know that I understand it, and I don't know that I can get really excited about it. And as soon as I heard that, I thought, well, man, we got to go back to the drawing board then, because I need everybody at this table being a flag bearer for this mission and vision. So the next day, what we ended up landing on is something that I am super fired up about. And it's our why is to inspire people to own their career, because 90,000 hours of your life shouldn't suck. And what I like so much about that why statement, one, it's not grandiose and we're going to change the world, but it's very specific and it's very focused. We spend, I think it was either a Deloitte study, or it might have been another study we were looking at, said you spend over 90,000 hours of your life at work. And when I read that last year, I thought, man, that is a powerful statistic, because when I talk to most people about their work, they hate their job. They have no passion for their job. There's another study we read that 87% of Americans have zero passion for their work. And that to me is just freaking sad, that the thing that we spend 90,000 hours of our life at, we have no passion for. When I think about how Sweetfish can solve that problem, there are lots of organizations. Patrick Lencioni's organization is one that they consult leadership teams. They go in and they help organizations get healthy through Patrick's, consulting and his speaking and his books. And it's phenomenal. They're coming at it from the top. They know that if they can change the leadership team, they can change the culture of organizations and ultimately, create much healthier organizations and help people not hate their work. The direction we're coming at it from is from the content that we create. And so that verbiage of owning your career, we're not talking necessarily just to the leadership team, though I think our content is helpful to them. We're talking to everyone in an organization. And with our strategy to launch shows in hundreds of industries and job categories, in HR, industrial manufacturing, like all of these different topics that we're rolling out shows for, I think if anybody in those industries consumes our content, it is going to inspire and empower and equip them to really own their career, take their career into their own hands, and not say, oh, well, I got to wake up and go to this job that I hate because that's just the cards I've been dealt. I'm so passionate. Our third core value is own the result. Take your life into your own hands. Like, don't let life happen to you. You happen to life. And if someone doesn't love what they're doing, we hope that through the content we're producing, they are empowered and inspired to pursue something different or become better at their job so that they don't have to hate what they're doing. And so that's a little bit of the thinking behind our why. Logan, what are your thoughts on it?
I mean, I had a couple thoughts. So you mentioned for CEOs going into this exercise with their team. And while, like you said, it sucks when your baby gets called ugly, I recommend, as you're saying, that whoever kind of is coming to the table with kind of the first idea or some things that they've been mulling on, keep your mind open, because if you're not getting pushback, that means that you don't have people who are vested in carrying that flag. Because
Yes.
if they're not pushing back and they're just saying, okay, maybe they're an Enneagram like me, Enneagram 9 like me, and they're just agreeable. But the more likely thing is that it's not going to mean much. They're not going to carry the flag forward on that. So the pushback that may feel tough is actually something you should be looking for, because the lack of it should actually be an alarm bell for you that your leadership team might not be bought
Fully
into
engaged.
waving that flag for it, right?
Yep.
So I really like what you said there, and I think that's a big takeaway for other leaders. Let's talk a little bit about the mountaintop as we moved on to that. To me, going through this exercise, at times I kind of caught myself thinking like, man, we're spending a lot of time on, two sentences. But what I loved about it is, what you were talking about, both with our why and with our mountaintop, it was like this molding process where we're adding some, we were taking some away, we were seeing some good parts. And then we saw parts that were like, maybe that's not as good. And to your point about the why, we started with something that was a little bit more narrow and didn't encapsulate that own your career. It kind of spoke
Mm-hmm.
to, well, let's just get better at your job, because
Yep.
then you'll be happier. But own your career could mean be better at the job that you have, move up within your organization. It could mean, hey, you totally want to switch. You want to go from selling copiers to joining a startup in podcasting like I did. And so I think in both, just thinking, having that mindset that words do matter and it's going to have an impact on your team. So with that, let's move to mountaintop, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Logan, we ended up defining our mountaintop as this: it's to educate 1 million people every single day. And when you think about that, you think, well, that's really short. Like that's aren't most statements like that more long and grandiose? And I would say, yeah, they are. Most statements are really long and grandiose, and most employees have no idea what their company's vision is. And as we were looking at kind of some examples of some other really large companies, quite frankly, man, I was bored reading through a lot of where these companies have said that they're going and what their vision is. And it was long and drawn out and not exciting. And I think something that I've been very passionate about, I'm very aligned with Donald Miller's line of thinking on this, is clarity is everything. And if you confuse, you'll lose. And that means both internally and externally. So with your marketing message externally, but internally with your people, if your messaging is not clear and concise, they're just not going to remember it. And I think knowing that the direction that we're going as a company, shifting away from being a podcast service provider, shifting into becoming a media company that owns media properties, this statement means so much. I mean, it changes how we measure success here at Sweetfish. Instead of looking, just at the number of downloads for a given podcast as a metric of success, we're now looking at daily reach numbers. So how many times has the content from this show been seen across Instagram, across YouTube, across LinkedIn, across the podcast, across the blog article associated with it, and starting to kind of package all of that up together, because it's not as much about the medium anymore. We used to be very focused on podcast, and that was a great way for us to start. But now we're really a podcast first media company. But the implication of that is media company is way more all encompassing than just one channel. And yeah, the content starts as a podcast, but the video that we're creating from it, the written content we're creating from it, all of that stuff has the potential of inspiring someone to own their career. So, the dashboards we're going to be creating this year, allowing us to give us really insight and visibility into how many people are we reaching every day with each of our shows, is ultimately going to roll up to us achieving our vision. What's your you measure in John Doerr's book about OKRs, it's you measure what matters. And having clarity around this vision, what we call our mountaintop, I think is going to help us set the right metrics so that we can start measuring what actually matters to us as an organization.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, the why gives you that motivation, that mountaintop helps you see where you're going and either motivates you more to get there. So it kind of has a similar effect, but it also tells you, are we there or not? Right.
Yeah.
Like if you're just in a fast growth company, and again, going back to that growth for growth's sake, yeah, we're growing. Are we growing at the clip that we wanted to? And it gives us that language to make decisions. Are we going to invest here? Are we going to take on this project? And we can stop and say, very much like when we're evaluating, team performance or celebrating wins, we have that language, as you talked about earlier, with our values. We use own the result as a hashtag on Slack. Oftentimes they're baked into the values champ award that we give out each month. Our why and our mountaintop give us that common language to talk about our goals, like our OKRs, as we get into that methodology this year. So I'm really excited about it. I love where we landed, even though I thought the first iteration, it wasn't super ugly. So I'll give you that, buddy. But I do really like where we ended up landing. And I appreciate our leadership team so much for being willing to push back, for putting thought and effort to it, and being able to disagree in a very healthy way. I'm so thankful for our team in that way, and can't wait to see what the rest of 2020 and beyond looks like, man.
Yeah,
well, as always, thank you so much for listening, folks. This is always fun. Hope you get a ton of value of hearing James and I riff a little bit, share a little bit behind the curtain here. If anybody listening to this would like to stay connected with us, LinkedIn is often an easy way to do that, or hit us up on Instagram. James, thanks so much, man. This is a ton of fun.
Thanks a lot, my man.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.